TV. I am Christiana Babayo. Before we begin, here are the headlines. Tinubu swears in new FCC chair and 37 commissioners. Court proscribes industrial action as Wike sues FCTA workers over strike. NJC forwards 14 lawyers' names to President for Federal High Court judgeship. ADC blasts federal and state government over Kaduna abductions. INEC limits PVC collection to FCT as area council poll approaches. APC forum warns replacing Shettima on Tinubu ticket would be disastrous. Civil society urges Senate to fast-track Electoral Act amendments or risk jeopardizing 2027 polls. And now the news in full. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has formally administered the oath of office to Hulayiat Ayo Omidiran as the new chairperson of the Federal Character Commission (FCC) and to 37 commissioners representing the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. The swearing-in took place on Thursday at about 4:48 p.m. at the State House, Abuja. Omidiran, who is 59 years old and from Osun State, succeeds Dr. Muhiba Dankaka and brings to the role extensive legislative and administrative experience, including 2 terms in the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2019, where she represented the Ayedade Irewole Ishokan Federal Constituency. She also has a background in sports administration and founded a women's football club, Omidiran Babes FC. Prior to her swearing-in, Omidiran was appointed by President Tinubu on August 11, 2025, and her nomination was confirmed by the Senate on November 27, 2025, following security clearance and vetting by the Senate Committee on Federal Character and Intergovernmental Affairs. Alongside Omidiran, the commissioners sworn in at the ceremony include representatives from across Nigeria's geopolitical zones, such as Peter Eze, Abdulwasiu Bawala, Obinna Oriaku, Lawan Roni, Abubakar Bunu, and Dora Ebong, among others drawn from 36 states and FCT. Mohammed Musa was sworn in as FCC Secretary. President Tinubu charged the newly sworn-in chairperson and commissioners to uphold fair representation and national stability, describing the commission as the nation's conscience and stressing the importance of justice and equity in federal appointments and resource allocation. The National Industrial Court (NICN) in Abuja has proscribed further industrial action by workers in the Federal Capital Territory Administration and granted a legal bid by FCT Minister Nyesom Wike and the FCTA to restrain union leaders and staff from continuing their ongoing strike. The ruling came amid a dispute over welfare promotions and entitlements that has shut down several government offices in the capital. The industrial action declared indefinite by members of the Joint Union Action Congress on January 19, 2026 over unresolved issues including promotion arrears and wage awards resulted in the closure of the FCTA Secretariat and other departmental offices across Abuja. Workers asserted that repeated efforts to engage FCTA management and the minister had failed, prompting their decision to withdraw services as allowed under labor laws. In response, Wike and the FCTA filed a lawsuit at the NICN Abuja division, seeking an interlocutory injunction to halt the strike, arguing that the industrial action threatened to cripple public service delivery. On January 21, 2026, Justice E.D. Subilim granted the government's application, ordering that the GUAC leaders and members, along with their agents, be restrained from picketing, lockouts, road blockades, or any disruptive activity that could paralyze FCTA operations. The order expressly bars the union from assuming further industrial actions, with the court authorizing substituted service of court processes such as publication in national newspaper and posting at the GUAC office at the FCTA Secretariat after repeated absence of the union's leaders in court proceedings. The National Judicial Council (NJC) has recommended 14 lawyers to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for appointment as judges of the Federal High Court, marking a key step in judicial appointments for the 2026 legal year. The decision was taken at the NJC's 110th meeting held on January 13 to 14th, and presided over by Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Monot-Mori Olatokunbo Kekere-Ekun. The council resolved to recommend successful candidates who had undergone rigorous vetting, including mandatory security reports before forwarding their names to the presidency. After confirming that no adverse comments emerged from the candidates' security evaluations, the council formally submitted the list of 14 nominees to President Tinubu on January 22nd. The group of recommended candidates include Suleiman Amida Hassan, the Chief Registrar of the Federal High Court, along with Muhammad Barau Saidu, Iboko Chinelo, Onuebe Chioma Angela, Galumje Edinga, Ibrahim Vera, Abubakar Musa, Salihu Aisha Yunusa, Ikpeme Joy Basi, Shehu Umaru Adamu, Muhammad Ibrahim Buba, Egege Bijin, Nendemom Judith, Usoro Kuyik Uduak, and Nwoye Osinachi Donatus. The NJC's role in recommending judicial appointments is part of constitutional provisions designed to strengthen judicial independence and integrity in Nigeria's justice system. The African Democratic Congress (ADC) has sharply criticized both the federal government and Kaduna State government for what it described as a stone silence and initial denials surrounding the mass abduction of worshippers in Kurmin-Wali Kujuru local government area, Kaduna State, urging urgent rescue efforts and transparent reporting. The opposition party statement came after reports that armed men seized a large number of churchgoers, widely reported to be more than 170, after a service in the mid-January. Security agencies and government authorities initially downplayed or denied the occurrence, but confirmation followed only after public outcry and media coverage. In its criticism, the ADC described the initial denials as evidence of a government more concerned with managing public image than protecting citizens, and said the federal government's lack of immediate engagement signaled fatigue rather than commitment to addressing insecurity. The party demanded that all abducted persons be safely rescued and returned to their families, and called for an independent investigation into the circumstances of both the kidnapping and the initial government response. It also urged authorities to lift restrictions on media and civil society access to affected areas and to fully disclose any negotiations or arrangements made with armed groups.
We will now go on a short break, and when we come back, the news will continue. Stay tuned.
The Papyrus Global, we don't just cover events, we create cinematic experiences. From red carpets to birthdays, gala dinners, and your fairy tale weddings, we bring your moments to life with high-tech precision. Our gadgets are smarter, our lenses sharper, and our team simply world-class. Trust the Papyrus Global to tell your story in the boldest, brightest way possible.
Welcome back, and now the news will continue.
The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has clarified that the current Permanent Voter Card (PVC) collection exercise applies exclusively to residents of the Federal Capital Territory ahead of the area council elections scheduled for February 21st, 2026. In a statement issued ahead of the polls, INEC said the in-person PVC collection, which began in January 22nd, 2026, is intended to enable eligible voters in the FCT to obtain their cards at their respective ward registration points between January 22nd and January 26th. It emphasized that the exercise currently does not cover other states and that schedules for PVC collections elsewhere have not been determined. INEC's resident electoral commissioner for the FCT confirmed the availability of the cards for newly registered voters, transfers and replacement, and noted that collection will continue after the initial period at INEC area council offices within the territory. INEC move aims to ensure orderly voter participation and reduce confusion by setting clear parameters around the distribution exercise. The elections will fill 6 chairmanship and 62 councillorship seats across the FCT's 6 area councils, with preparations underway in logistics, security coordination, and voter education. A prominent forum within the All Progressives Congress (APC) has cautioned that replacing Senator Kashim Shettima as the vice presidential nominee on President Bola Tinubu's ticket ahead of the 2027 elections would be disastrous for party unity and electoral strategy. The warning was issued as political speculation intensifies around potential ticket realignments ahead of next year's general polls. The APC forum, which comprises influential party leaders and strategists, argued that Shettima's continued presence on the ticket provides regional balance and helps consolidate support across key geopolitical blocs. They said that replacing him now, less than 2 years before the election year, would risk alienating stakeholders who view the current ticket as inclusive and strategically positioned. Senator Shettima, a former governor of Borno State, was selected as Tinubu's running mate in the 2023 presidential contest, a move designed to strengthen the APC's appeal in northern Nigeria. Forum members emphasized that altering the arrangement could be perceived as weakening the party's commitment to power sharing across regions, potentially diminishing its competitiveness in the northeast and north-central states. A coalition of civil society organizations has warned that continued delay by Senate in amending the Electoral Act threatens the credibility and timeliness of Nigeria's 2027 general elections, signaling deep concern about legislative inertia ahead of a critical electoral year. The appeal was made during a public briefing on January 22nd, 2026 in the nation's capital. The coalition, including advocacy groups focused on democratic governance, emphasized that while the House of Representatives completed its review of proposed amendments in the previous legislative session, the Senate has yet to undertake clause-by-clause consideration, leaving the reform process stalled. The group said this delay undermines stakeholders' ability to prepare for next year's election and injects uncertainty into election planning and legal frameworks. Key issues identified by the civil society coalition include provision on party nomination processes, dispute resolution mechanisms, campaign financing transparency, and voter inclusivity enhancements. The group argued that without timely passage of these reforms planned by the Independent National Electoral Commission and political parties to implement necessary changes could be significantly hindered, potentially affecting voter confidence and election integrity. The senators' delay, the coalition noted, compounds concerns over lead time for electoral preparations, given that constitutional and legal reforms need to be in place well ahead of the elections to allow for procedural adjustments, training of electoral staff, and public education. They urged the National Assembly's upper chamber to reconvene and prioritize the amendment process without further postponement. And that's all we have on the news update on Papyrus Global TV. I am Christiana Babayo. Thanks for joining us.